Welcome to another episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we're going to be talking about what to do, what to say when you think you're at the end of your rope. Have you been there? Are you there now? Well, today's the day you want to listen in and get some solid advice, some solid thoughts, and some encouragement for what may be a path out of that place of despair. I'm with our favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove. We're going to dig into this topic. It's not one that is new. We're in the coaching and the counseling field. And so you see people struggling with this. So I want to normalize, your experience. And Kyle, you see people that are at the end of their rope or believe that they are. And what would you say to somebody that comes into your office and says, I am so done with this marriage? What do you say to them?
Well, funny you should ask, because when I have people that feel like they are at the end of anything, that they've done everything that they can, it is rarely my experience that when we dig into it, that we determine that that's actually true. Mm. If someone tells me that they're at the end of their rope, I just say, I want to see that rope. I want you to pull it out and produce it right now, because I want to see what the end of it looks like. Because I think there are a lot of people who perceive themselves to be at the end of their ropes. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And so it's not a judgment or a criticism to anyone to say, you may feel that you're at the end of your rope, but the truth of the matter is you're really not. I don't know that any of us ever truly get to the end of our rope, having done everything that we could to avoid that situation. But we feel like we have, and sometimes it's just the fatigue and the tiredness that we experience from having constant issues and constant scenarios in our lives that require our attention and our work. Just that tiredness can sometimes cause us to feel that way. I had a client the other day who said, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And I asked him, what is it that you're speaking of when you say this, how much longer I can do this? And he says, it just seems like I always have issues in my life, that there are always things going on that require my effort and my work. And I thought about it for a minute, because I hadn't really heard anybody put it that way, at least not in quite some time. And after I thought through it, I asked him, I said, so what is it that you expect? What is it that you're actually looking for that you don't feel like you have, or that you're not getting, that causes you to feel like you can't do this much longer? And there was really no answer. It was a statement made out of frustration and fatigue, with really no thought given to it in terms of what's the alternative. Because I think the alternative to not having constant issues and things that we need to work on is being dead. And
there's so much truth in that. Like, where there's life, where there's breath, there's hope. But when that's gone, that's when it's over.
It's done.
It's done.
Yep, you're at that point where afterthoughts. And it comes as a shock to some people, probably a lot of people, to know that, or to find out that I'm not going to arrive. All of this effort and expectation that I put into getting to a place where I don't have to worry about anything, I don't have to work on anything, is a myth.
Yeah, that's not this side of heaven, is it?
No.
And I don't even think it's there, because apparently there's learning there too.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. I agree totally with the expression of exhaustion that people feel. And so much of that comes from, I think, one of two places: either overexposure with a lack of tenacity or capacity, right? And then that might involve a lack of skill also, right? Or the other side of this is lack of joy. Like if we're miserable, grumpy, negative people, we're not going to have the ability to do much of anything for very long. And so the bigger our joy bucket is, the fuller it is, the more we're able to handle the garbage that life dishes us on a regular basis, because that is pretty difficult. Yeah.
And something funny about that, you say a lack of joy, because we do run across people on occasion, fairly regularly actually, who are experiencing this lack of joy. And the crazy thing about it is they can't see joy, they can't find joy,
Right.
and they can't experience joy, because when they don't have it, they look for other situations and other people that don't have it too. They also look for all the reasons they don't have joy. And when that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to find.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to see. And we're all the same way. Whatever it is we're looking for, we're going to see that mostly and more often than anything else. And when that's not what we want, it's, we sing, you can't always get what you want. But when you're not looking for what you want, then you can't really expect to get much different.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so true. And gratitude, God tells us to be grateful, to be thankful in all things, which is a mindset that's the secret sauce to fueling a joyful mindset, is to be grateful. But you have to train your mind to do that. And if you haven't been working at that, then guess what? It's easy to be miserable. Like any idiot can be miserable, and most are.
Yeah.
It's simple to complain. You can find something wrong with something very easily. Our brains are wired for that. It's normal to see what's wrong. It is actually more of a higher level of existence to seek out what's right, to look for what's positive, and then bring life to that. But if we don't do that, boy, we don't have the capacity to handle tough relationship situations.
You're not wrong.
So if you've got a couple that, is struggling with this, and let's say one of these people is your client, because that's usually pretty typical. It's hard to get both people in the same situation where they both want to do something. But you've got the one person who's, constantly focused on their spouse. Well, they never do this, and he never does that. And she never, or she's always, and he's, so there's a lot of blame involved. What are your steps to shifting the mindset into a space where they can start thinking differently and creating a new reality for themselves and their marriage?
It's almost like a rebuild. It's almost like, we need to strip everything that we think we know to be true away and begin building from the ground up. I think, because it's a way of thinking. It's a perception that happens over and over and over again, that only bad things happen to me. Or if or maybe I'm the only person that all these bad things happen to. That it's a it's a difficult place to be in that relationship, where the negative and the difficulty and the issues seem to be blamed on someone else. But it's funny you bring that up, because just yesterday, I think I saw that you liked this. You liked the post that I made, and I'm going to read it here because I didn't remember it word for word. You're not grown until you know how to communicate, apologize, be truthful, and here's the kicker: accept accountability without blaming somebody else.
Yep. Yeah, I loved that.
And I didn't write that, by the way, but I saw it and I stole it immediately, if not sooner, and got that up on my page, so people will think that I'm that intelligent.
Well, I think that's probably accurate, because you're smart enough to go, yeah, that's true. Somebody else needs to know.
Yeah, you know what? Something's good when you see it. So, and I saw this and I thought to myself, wow, those are simple but powerful tools, and I call them tools. because you mentioned a while ago that one of the reasons that people get mired down in a lot of the issues and things that they have is because they don't have the skills to get themselves out. And so when I talk about communication, when I talk about, it says apologize, we'll just call that humility, truth, and accepting accountability without blaming someone else. These things take practice.
Yeah,
they take it's a learning experience from the get-go. And if we are realistic about this, we see that learning experience is one that never ends if we choose for it not to.
Yeah, I wrote a book called The Respect Dare, and I have a bunch of reviews on Amazon, like hundreds of them, like 600 or something. And there's people that hate the book, and they hate the book, and it's 40 days to a deeper connection with God and your husband or something like that. It's written for women. The people that hate the book blast me for putting this on Christian women to respect their husband, and then they spend some time criticizing men, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm not talking to both of you. Right now I'm talking to women, right? And I was actually, they're on sale right now on Amazon. So our social media person was like, hey, you got to let people know. So I was like, okay. So I was looking at reviews and I was thinking about this, and it reminded me of when I started the ministry. And I started with this class called Daughters of Sarah, and it was for married Christian women. And I'm standing at this table in my church, and and it's married Christian women in this class, and here's an information meeting, blah, blah, blah. This single woman comes up to me and just lays into me. I can't believe you're doing something so exclusionary. And I'm like, what? She goes, this should include all women. And I said, well, it's about marriage. And she's like, well, I can't believe you did something that doesn't include single women. I said, I am so sorry. It's not my heart to exclude you, but maybe God's calling you into a singles ministry. He's calling me into this marriage thing. And I will pray for you, because I feel like you should go start something to fill this need. And I'm sorry, it isn't my intent to hurt you with this. But it's kind of like, when my kids were in high school, we joined a ski club, like downhill snow skiing. Nobody ever came up to us and verbally assaulted us for excluding swimmers.
Yeah.
It's a mindset, and you're going to find what you're looking for, right? So people that get offended because the Bible tells women, respect your husbands. It says that. I can't change that. It says that. And I know a thing or two about how that looks. It sounds really arrogant to say, and I'm not perfect at it, just so you know. But the Bible also tells men to love their wives, right? And so, yeah, we can have those conversations or whatever, but to say, I am going to feel offended because I'm going to find a problem. Oh, how about you're making that up?
Yeah.
This is a book for married women, right? I'm talking to women here about you and your interaction and your thing here. And no, it's not a book about boundaries. There's an assumption that's made there. And the feedback I get a lot is that, wow, this totally, like the top review from April, I just saw this today, said, I'm on Dare 2 and it totally changed my marriage. Like, how is that? I don't even know how that's possible. But she went on to talk about how rude she's been to her husband. So the point is that you can find a problem with just about anything, and most people will, if that's how they're wired, right? And I'm not saying the book is a perfect solution for anything. I don't think any book that any human writes is, or any movie, anything heard by either of us even, right? It's not going to apply to everybody. So you gotta, it's like sift, take what's good that applies to you, that God says, hey, heads up, and leave the rest, right? Or you can focus on what you think doesn't apply and be miserable. Like, do that because you're good at that. Like, stop it. That's not being light. Sorry.
And be content. No, that's okay. Be content. Be content with what you sift. I in a past life, I facilitated a children's golf clinic on occasion. And I recall very vividly one afternoon, it was, I think, the second class in this clinic. And one of the little participants was a little boy. I want to guess he was probably third or fourth grade. And he had to bring his own clubs because he was left-handed. And in the kit that I got for this clinic from the company that, put it on, didn't have any left-handed clubs in it.
Hmm.
So he brought his own clubs. His parents knew,
Sure.
and that was probably likely to happen. And so when the day was over and we had finished our drills and our lessons, and this kid, by the way, was having a blast. He was having fun, cutting up with all the other kids and having a good time and learning some things. And his mother came to me and said, "When are you going to do this left-handed for my son?" And I was kind of caught by surprise by the question. And I answered her rather abruptly. And I said, "I guess when I become left-handed, but I'm not. And I can't do this left-handed." "Well, if you're going to teach the class, you need to be able to teach it for the right-handed children and the left-handed children." And I said, "Well, I understand what you're asking, but I also find it extraordinarily unreasonable
Mm-hmm.
as an expectation for anybody to be able to pull this off one way, much less two ways."
Yeah.
Golf is hard. But anyway, we have this expectation, the one that you're talking about, that people have an expectation that it's one size fits all, or you shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't
Yeah.
write that book if it's for a specific audience or a particular audience. And
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from. I have my ideas, but I don't know why I'm kind of offended that I have to live in that environment.
Well, that's a thought, right?
Yeah.
Being offended at somebody's offense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really, well, being offended is a choice. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
And
Absolutely.
and again, it goes straight back to what we talked about 10 minutes ago in terms of what are you looking for?
Mhm.
What are you looking at? What are you paying attention to? What has your attention right now? Because what it is what you're going to see.
Yeah.
Okay. And if being offended and casting blame everywhere but to yourself is what you're looking at and what you want to do, then you're going to see plenty of opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
To find something wrong is an easy task to do.
Yeah. I had a friend contact me today and she's like, "Okay, I have this person in my life that I feel like I'm supposed to help. And I just want to slap her." I was like, "Okay." Wow, that's a place to start, right? Tell me more. She goes, "Well, I'm just so frustrated. Like I'm doing all the validation things. She blames her husband for every little thing. She cannot see that she's chosen a victim seat. She won't have any boundaries. She keeps expecting him to be different." Oh yeah, insanity. You do the same thing the same way, expecting different results. And she's like, "Yep, that's it." She just wants him to change, and she will not take any ownership. She will not say no to him over anything. She keeps giving and giving and giving, and he keeps taking advantage and being rude to her. And then she keeps getting her heart broken. I said, "Okay." She goes, "Well, what do I do with that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know that you can do anything with that. She's got to make a decision around wanting something different. She seems pretty content in her stuckness." And she's like, "Well, what is that called?" I said, "Well, we call it victim thinking." And it is a place that people get. I mean, I've worn that hat, the one that says victim. I've put it on and wandered around in it. I don't like it, but I catch myself now and again, not very often anymore, but it used to be a place that I could live in. Decades ago, I was pretty good at it. And that's where you're blaming somebody else, right? But to your point about the post, having agency, that's how you get out of that. Now, if you
Yes.
want something different, you take responsibility for the way things are, and then you move forward differently in them. But to keep doing what you're doing when it clearly doesn't work, that's on you.
Yep. That's a
Love it.
disease. It's
How's
called
that?
victimitis.
Victimitis. Yeah.
Yes, victimitis. And the cure for it is accountability.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. So what is it that gets people they're when they have like this history, you said a rebuild, right? So you've got to rebuild. Like, where do you start with that rebuild?
The end of your rope.
Oh,
For a lot of people, unfortunately, that's where they have to find themselves before they see the need for the rebuild.
true.
But an element of humility doesn't hurt. And sometimes I like to tell people the beginning of humility is a closed mouth. And when we'll be quiet, stop complaining,
Mhm.
stop blaming, observe and listen, I think we're going to get a different perspective as to what reality is.
Mm,
Because we'll grab a hold of something and run with it as if it's true, not knowing for certain that it is.
fair.
And unfortunately, that means things about ourselves,
Mhm.
or things, ways at which we are being afflicted and by others,
Mhm.
or by other situations, or by circumstances, or by the environment, or whatever it might be. But we take it and run with it without doing the research. And then we become that way.
Yeah.
So I believe that the cure to this is understanding the need to take accountability and do something about it. Unfortunately, the idea of being intentional about our lives and about the relationships in our lives and some of the
Mhm.
circumstances of our lives is foreign to so many people.
Yeah.
It's foreign. It's like, this is just supposed to work out for me. I talk about this all the time. We're a society of box checkers. I've checked all the boxes. I've done what society says I have to do to have a great marriage. Checked all the boxes, did all the things.
Mhm.
But doing the things that society wants you to do and to say, that you've done this successfully has nothing to do with the individual work that needs to be done, because none of us are alike. None of us have the same circumstances. It can't be a matter of checking boxes. It has to be a matter of deep diving,
Yeah.
into the inner part and the inner soul of a person who's hurting, and find out what it is that's causing that pain. And as often as not, if not more often than not, we find that pain is there so unnecessarily.
Mhm.
So unnecessarily. Faulty thinking is usually what brings that to fruition. And that can come from 1,000 different places and in 100 different ways.
Oh, amen to that. Yeah, I
But
was
it becomes our perception. And that perception is what
huh.
leads us
Yep.
into the victim mentality, the blame game, the lack of accountability that, requires effort. It's like, I already grew up. I went through this once. I learned all the things. Now I don't want to work for that any longer.
Mhm.
That seems to be prevalent for a lot of folks.
Well, I know for myself, I once in a while when I'm exhausted, usually physically, right, or been sick or something like that, I just want somebody to take care of me. Like, just like, can my 90-some-year-old mother just come down here? And I'm being facetious. I don't really want her to do that, but it's easy to want to stop adulting for a minute, when you get into that space. But what's also true is that so much of it is a choice when we don't even know that we have it, right?
Yeah.
We just don't even know that we have it. I was working with a group last week and we were talking about money, and like it's never about money, right? When you're talking with couples about conflict and money, it's never about the money.
It's
And
never always about the money.
right. Well, yeah, sometimes
That's
it is, but most of the time it's about what's the value underneath, what's this
yeah.
perception thing, and so one of the guys is dealing with a situation where she's feeling controlled, and she tells him, "You're being controlling." And she grew up in a home where there weren't a lot of access to resources. There was poverty in some situations, and other people had more than they did, and The answer was no, quite a bit. And so all he's doing is trying to create a budget. Like, he's not doing anything absurd or whatever. And he's like, I don't know what to do with this, because I can't even get the horse out of the gate. We can't even have this conversation, because every time I bring it up, she says to me, you're being controlling. And I said, well, so what do you do with that when she says that? And he goes, well, I argue with her. I said, how's that working?
What else is there?
Yeah, exactly. And he says, well, it's not. That's why we're talking. I was like, fair. And I said, maybe instead of saying, no, I'm not, you're being unreasonable, which is what he was saying to her, maybe instead try saying, what are you afraid of? What's your concern with talking about this? And get at what's underneath that, because there's something else there. She's afraid of losing something, and he says, well, she's telling me it's me. And I said, well, maybe you are like doing something that's not helpful, be open to that. But that's also possible that you guys aren't having the right conversation. Like, you're trying to talk about money, but you're not talking about money. You're talking about character issues. And there's a reason those perceptions are there. So maybe that's the conversation you should be having. He's like, oh, yeah. So it's not all her fault, and it's not all my fault. It's, So it's those kinds of things.
But at the same time, something as normal as a couple needing to talk about how they budget their resources.
Yeah.
On the surface, what's he asking her to do?
Right.
He's asking her to take accountability.
Right. I know.
And she's afraid of it. She's afraid of that accountability. She's afraid of what it's going to require of her. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's at the surface of that. That's what I see. I mean, I get 10 of us together and we see 18 different things.
Exactly.
But that's what I see. Why? It's because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people to need to be accountable. So that's all I say.
Well, of course it is, right? Yeah. I mean, and you just, to your point, that's reality for everybody.
Yeah.
We find what we look for, whether it's gold or gravel. So so I think that's probably, go ahead.
I was just going to say, a couple of weeks ago, I found myself sitting at a red light fuming, and I don't even remember now what it was about, but I do remember the thought that I had, and I may have even verbalized it. Can just one thing today go right? Just one.
Okay.
Now, two things that come to mind. Number one, it's been a whole 10 to 14 days, and I don't even remember what it was about. Which means, how important could it have been? Truthfully,
I know, right?
Or it was probably just a conglomeration of smaller things that brought me to that point of frustration. But then, as I sat and thought a little bit longer, I thought, what are you focusing on? And I was focusing on all the little problems that had cropped up, all the little things, all the little fires that had to be put out, all the little things going on, rather than seeking solutions for those problems. I was making myself a victim to all of these circumstances that I had no control over, just happening to me. It just happened and happened and happened to me and happened to me. And really none of that matters unless I'm allowing myself to be taken advantage of somehow. And that's another issue of my own, if that's the case. But the truth of the matter is, regardless of where the problems came from or how many of them there were or how I felt about it at the moment, the only way past that is to begin thinking about, how do we solve this?
Solution. Yep. And that's on you. Yeah.
And so
me.
Was I thinking about solutions? No. So I didn't see solutions.
Right.
I was thinking about what a victim I was on this day. And that's all I could see was problems and problems and problems. And the problems were having problem children, and the problem children were having problem grandchildren. And before I knew it, I had an entire dynasty of problems, that stretched back centuries and centuries ago.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. What's super true about that too is, you're a solution-minded person. And so I think it's human nature. I have a lot of training in this too, and we still do it occasionally. Right. And so, making gratitude a habit is absolutely something we need to be hot after. I think that's why God calls David a man after God's own heart, because David would start his prayers with wanting everyone dead by the end of it. And I don't know how many days those took, But by the end of it, he was praising God again. So that gratitude really just pulls us into the right mindset. So
And I think gratitude is a lot like kindness. The more you do it, the more you want to do it.
yeah.
The more you are grateful and show a heart that is a true heart of gratitude, not just pretending. But showing a heart of gratitude causes you to feel good. It causes you to feel at peace. It causes you to feel a sense of satisfaction and contentment that maybe you didn't when you weren't grateful.
Yep.
And
That's
so
fair.
the more you do it, the more you want to do it. And the more we want to do things, typically the more we do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. That's real good.
That's
Well,
my
if you
slogan.
guys,
I'm sticking to it.
I think you should, and I think more of our listeners should sign up for that train of thought as well before it leaves the station. So if you want more around this, hop over to our website, greaterimpactcouples.org, and grab yourself a PDF around how to stop walking on eggshells. And and be sure to check out greaterimpact.org for more tips and more podcast episodes. Subscribe to the channel and keep learning about how to deal with conflict and have the marriage that God wants you to have. Have a great day.